Hey everyone, I just wanted to get back with you. Of course, this is the week 4 of purging, and we're purging together. This week we're still stuck on, no, not stuck, but we are focused on purging unhealthy, toxic relationships. And I think developing those types of relationships is a very bad habit, and it will hurt you in life and in business. So we're going to address that really quickly, not a long video. Found a really good article about it, and I want to share it with you and share my thoughts on it. So let's just jump right in. Oh, before we jump in, let's talk quickly about the book. Should be coming out in on Labor Day. So definitely keep us in mind for Labor Day to buy the book. It's called Something's Missing, Identifying the Startup Within. Also, don't forget to join us on our platform where we are focused on solving problems in our community and not posting and sharing them on Facebook and any other outlet repeatedly. So in that community, we focus on using entrepreneurship to develop solutions for problems. And so the web URL for that is site.nafasi.co. And you can visit us there and join the conversation and post solutions to problems and not just share articles, but we want to work together to develop solutions to some of the problems we're facing. We will also be in the future posting startup opportunities, so problems that need to be solved in our community from a business perspective, and people who were willing to pay for them to be solved. So continue to look out for that. All right, so let's get focused on confrontation. Number one, the first thing you have to do is you have to build a rapport. You have to have a relationship. So of course you have some level of relationship with a person if you need to confront them, in most cases. So if you don't really have a relationship with the person and it's, nothing egregious like someone breaking in your home or something, then in general, there's really not much to confront. So you may want to walk away, right? But if you have the relationship and there's some desire to maintain it, perhaps the first thing to do is to make sure that you have the kind of relationship that's necessary to effectively communicate about issues. Now, when you have a toxic relationship, that becomes challenging because you're probably not in a place. You're likely not to be in a place to feel like you can confront or be confronted, and so definitely that becomes more challenging. If you're having trouble building a rapport with the person to communicate the issue, then that is the issue, and so you may want to examine whether or not the relationship is healthy enough to maintain in the first place. So that's number one. Make sure that just examine the relationships and examine the rapport of the relationship and decide whether or not it makes sense to continue it. And also, number two is timeliness, right? So I know I personally had a bad habit of being offended by someone, but not addressing it immediately and kind of letting it fester, and that is just a recipe for disaster. I know that for a fact. I am a perpetrator of that. And ironically, of course, like everyone else or most other people, I hate when people do it to me. So definitely want to address it when the issue is maybe not first happened, but once you have identified how you really feel about it. And so number three, it's about righting the wrong and making people behave in the way that you're looking for them to behave, and not just focusing on the issue at hand, right? So it's really the conversation needs to be about corrective action going forward. Although you will likely need to discuss how and why you took offense to whatever happened, and maybe re-examine the boundaries that we discussed last week. So if you set the boundary, then you need to communicate that boundary effectively. Maybe you haven't, and maybe that's the issue, and maybe that's a corrective action that needs to take place. But either way, number three is really about making people, giving people the opportunity to do the right thing going forward, and setting them on a path to do that, and not just to make them feel wrong about what they did do. Um, this is a difficult one for me, and probably for many of you. Number four, about issues and not people. This is a really, really, really um, um, important part, because sometimes people are very quick to feel attacked when you confront them about things that they have done, even when they're in the wrong. And so you really need to make it about people and not about the issue at hand. And the best way to do that, I think, is to, of course, know where you stand on the issue, document why you stand that way, and then giving them an opportunity to either agree or disagree, or understand that, and then moving from that. So if you have a very clear stance on something, why you stand that way, and what to do about it going forward, then I think that it becomes about just a compliance issue and not like a character issue that you're attacking in a person. And then you can judge it fairly, because if you communicate effectively about where you stand, why you feel that way, and why it needs to be that way going forward, and they still don't do it, then you have an opportunity to you have all the data you need to go forward and make the right decision about the relationship. And that brings us to the next one, concise. So some people have a tendency to have long, drawn out, and want to talk forever about something that is not, and you get off topic and you end up going round and round in a circle. Make the issue about the issue and only the issue, right? And not the 12 other things that happen along with that, and who you talk to about it and all of this stuff. Just, here's the issue. Here's what I like to do going forward. And can you comply or not, right? So that's so important. Like, let me just say personally, I hate when people come to me with something that is unclear about what it is that how they really feel, but expect you to respond to it, and so it creates unreasonable conversation and dialogue that spirals out of control, and that's a nasty habit. It's a pet peeve of mine. I definitely, would ask you to focus on not doing that with folks, because nobody wants to feel like, if you go to someone and you don't know what you're talking about, you can't even tell them why you're upset, then they're not going to be motivated to behave differently. So it's better just to figure out what it is that's really bothering you, and what that person did or can do to make it better. Communication, number 6. So this is one that's really tough for me. Like, the tone is really tough. I think in male-female relationships, in business and personally, is really tough, because it's really important in all relationships. But at the same time, I think gender differences can vary. Men have these, in some cases, in many cases, deeper voices, and sometimes our voice carries, and it's a problem. Also, like, ethnically or culturally, more importantly, some people may grow up in an environment where people talk louder or people yell to get their point across, and some people grow up in an environment where no one ever yelled, and so it just becomes a real challenge. It's a big culture issue. So it's not really about race. Race can play a part, but I think it's really about culture, where you grew up, how you grew up, and how people dealt with issues and confrontation in your home. And so I think the home life is the biggest reason why people struggle with confrontation in their personal lives as adults, what they saw in their home. So A lot of times, if there was abuse in the home and it wasn't directly confronted, then people don't know how to confront in the other areas of their lives, and that's a recipe for not being able to set up effective boundaries and all the things we talked about last week. So, um, making sure, getting back to the tone though, we have to give each other leeway. I know I struggle with having a voice that carries, and when I do get stern and when I am focused on what I want to say, people can feel like I'm yelling at them, and sometimes I'm like, I'm not yelling, but I feel like that person feels like I'm yelling. So it's something I struggle with, and as a black man in the workplace, it can be even more, damaging. So it's something to consider. I have my mixed feelings about it. I definitely think people need to kind of get over it. But there are times when you uh, are definitely yelling at someone, and you're yelling at someone. So when you're yelling and you're talking, um, screaming and yelling to get your point across, as opposed to just talking and communicating at a reasonable tone, then that's a problem. If you're talking in a normal voice or just trying to stress a point and your voice kind of goes up or carries, I think that we kind of have to give people leeway, because I don't think any of us chose the voice we have, or how far it carries. So it just becomes, it's how conscientious do I need to be to make you feel comfortable, and how much leeway do you need to give me, um, for me to feel comfortable. So and it really goes back to, is the relationship worth um, continuing? And so if it is, then you have to figure it out. But the further you have to go to change yourself to communicate effectively in any kind of relationship, the more likely it is to fail. So you need to be able to be you and be the best you with while in relationship with other folks, whether it's in business or personal. So uh, it should be solution oriented. And just like we talk about on site.nafasi.co, that's another plug. Definitely come over and join the conversation there. We um, need to be focused on solving problems and not, sharing and constantly rehashing the same thing. What's the solution? And that is not just in, the offense, but in the actual boundaries and setting and all the things that we've been through in our lives. Like, are we just talking to hear ourselves talk? Are we talking to um, emote and make people feel badly about where we are? Or are we honestly saying, uh, this is how I feel, and this is how I want to feel, and here's how you can help me feel that way or respond differently to you? And it's just a choice, and how badly you want to be in that relationship. So you definitely want to always have the future in mind when you're dealing with confrontation, and that too goes back to having a rapport in that relationship and examining that said rapport, so that okay, this is a relationship I want to keep. So that if you want to keep it, then the confrontation needs to remain future oriented, so that you'll be able to um, maintain that relationship over time. Um, some people feel like when you set your boundary, that they don't want to communicate with you anymore, or that they're not going to work with you anymore, or they don't like it, so they don't contact you anymore because you set your boundary. And if that's the case, then you know where you stand. But that goes back to rapport, because that person or that organization doesn't value you enough to let you say, hey, here's what you've done, here's how it's impacted me, or here's how I prefer to be dealt with. And if they don't respect you enough to deal with you in that way, then again, that's how you create a toxic relationship, because you continue to go forward even though the people are not respecting your boundaries. And you're and you need to be willing to confront that internally and externally. with that person. So, and lastly, you want to have the opportunity to follow up with the person that you are confronting downstream. So some people feel like you only have an opportunity to have a conversation one time, and you don't want to have the same conversation over and over every day, but you do need to have the ability to follow up and say what's going on, find out where that person is, and that person should want to know where you are. If they've offended you, you want to know, well, what steps are you taking to keep yourself from offending me, and how can I help you? And they should want to know, how am I doing, right? And so if you can't have healthy conversation going forward with the folks you were in relationship with, then here again, examine the relationship. And sometimes confrontation is the walking away. And you have to know when to walk away. You have to know when to hold them and know when to fold them. And if you're not willing to walk away from a relationship, um, then that could be, once again, the beginning of a toxic relationship and the continuation of a toxic relationship. I heard a pastor say once, anything you can't say no to, you're in bondage to. And I take that to heart. I mean, anytime you cannot say no to a person, place, or thing, or activity, then that is an area of bondage, and it can be even addiction. So sometimes we are addicted to being treated in ways that are not healthy for us to live. And so, or sometimes we are addicted to actions that aren't healthy for us, like the types of food we eat or the places we go or activities we engage in. So um, I'll leave you with that. If you have any comments, always comment in here on YouTube or on Facebook, or hit me up on Twitter at Calhoun Speaks. Now I look forward to seeing you next week. Thanks.